Chef Linda Berry. Chef Linda Berry, it's nice to have you on the first episode of Nourishing Roots. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. It is a beautiful, snowy day in Cleveland, but I am very grateful to be one of the first guests of this show. I'm super excited to be here, and I thank you all for reaching out. I'm excited to share my story and a little bit of food.
Got me a food for this one.
Native of Cleveland, I want to start there. You are a native of Cleveland, Ohio, and Cleveland has such a rich history, some good, some bad. I did my research. I found out that Cleveland was actually the first city in America to be lit by electricity. Cleveland's the first city to hold a rock concert, and Cleveland is actually the birthplace of Superman. So how do you feel knowing that you are from a town with so much prestige?
It is honestly one of the things that we grew up knowing. I actually grew up in the same community where Superman was created. Mm-hmm. So we had that. I lived down the street from Bone Thugs and Harmony, so we can see the greatness around us. Halle Berry lived in Beechwood, and at the height of her career, we were like, oh, Halle Berry, Linda Berry, in my family, it's oh, that's our cousin. So it was great. I mean, we grew up knowing what existed around us and what we could do because of what existed around us.
Everyone has their own perception about Cleveland. It's a place where there's nothing to do. It's a cold, desolate place. But what can you tell us about what it was like growing up in Cleveland, and what about the culture of Cleveland that's been instilled in you has made you who you are today?
So LeBron James, who put Cleveland on the map for many people, had a quote, and he said, "Nothing given, everything earned." And that is how we grew up. We knew that we had certain areas that didn't have many things. We knew that we had areas where there were great moments of opportunity, down the street from where we are right now. The West Side Market is here. It is one of the most beautiful open air markets in the country. We have beautiful lakefront. I don't recommend you fishing and eating a lot of fish from the lakefront, but we saw the opportunity, and we saw how we can be the change that we wanted to see. When we were younger, I think my brothers and I both looked at Cleveland and said, this is our starting ground. We'll start here, we'll navigate other places, and eventually come back and be able to incorporate and infuse some of what we've learned into the fabric that's here. And so it's beautiful to see Cleveland. When I was growing up, I lived on the east side of Cleveland, so we had abandoned buildings, and to see industry come and grow and people be interested in Cleveland, not just for the cost of living, but for the fabric of who the people are. Having that grit growing up, you can't buy that. You can't teach that. It has to be inside of you. So I think that gives us an advantage, at least when I was growing up, for sure.
That's a big old carrot.
Yeah, it's no joke.
Now, do you intentionally try to match these colors in your dishes for the presentation, or it just naturally happens that way?
I would say I go for flavor first and then start to build off of the flavor afterwards with different variations of a cabbage. For me, getting the purple cabbage was intentional when I knew that I wanted the cabbage flavor. So it's a combination. I knew I needed green, and I was gonna get scallion, but I was like, well, let me switch it up a little bit. Let's add a little bit of sweetness with the snow peas.
Now, I want you to reach back into your memory database and recall back as far as you possibly can and find and share with us your earliest memory of being in a kitchen.
So that one is pretty easy. My grandmother, when I was growing up, she cooked all the time. And so the other kids would go outside and I would stay inside with my grandmother. The first thing that I ever remember being able to observe in the kitchen were preserves. My grandmother had fruit trees in her backyard, and we would go pick the fruit and she would stew it down, put it into jars, preserve it, and we would be able to enjoy it. And that brought me in because there was so much science behind how is this not spoiling? Why is this not going bad? And then we would take that and give it to people, and they thought that it was the greatest thing because a lot of times the people around my grandmother, they bought most of their groceries from the grocery store, and we were cooking for people. So that was the earliest memory that I have in the kitchen, making those preserves.
12 years old.
That was when I was like 4.
4 years old.
By the time I was 12, I was sous chef in the kitchen.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. So
Yep.
4 years old is your earliest memory in the kitchen. 12 years old, you're working in professional kitchens with your grandmother's catering company.
Yep.
How was that experience being 12 years old working in a professional kitchen?
I didn't know that everybody didn't do it. So for me, it was normal. Both of my grandmothers are French classically trained. So for me growing up, we got all the techniques, and being in a professional kitchen with both grandmothers was second nature. Everyone had to do it. I just am the one that ended up being a chef. Everyone else was like, no, this isn't for me. We've done our time in the kitchen. But at 12 years old, it felt empowering. I'm a young Black woman. I'm running a kitchen where I'm the youngest person, and everyone gives me the respect of, okay, yes, chef, like you need me to put out this large banquet for 100 people. You're giving me direction. And I was very serious of like, here's what needs to happen. Here's the timeline, taking pictures, marketing. I still had to work with my brothers. And so they were the most challenging part of being in charge of a kitchen at 12 years old. But even they had jobs. One brother made juice every single time. The other brother was like doing the setup and making sure that we had the food items, utensils that we needed for the event. So it was empowering. And my grandmother, I don't know if she did that part on purpose. She skipped over my mom and my aunt and my older cousins and was like, it's you. You're going to be the person that's running the kitchen. But I try to incorporate a lot of international flavors for at least one dish that I'm going to be making for any given event or dinner. Because usually when you're throwing an event or having something, it's not just people from one community or people with one shared experience. Usually they're like, oh, this reminds me of something that I got when I was on a cruise, or something that I got when I was, now that people travel so much, that makes introducing them to different dishes like this all the more easy, because you may have gotten something like this on a cruise ship or in Southeast Asia or in Japan.
And that's a beautiful thing, because at 12 years old, you didn't know it then, but you were already doing what you end up being taken a part of as an adult, which most people are fortunate enough to have that experience so young. So when you think back on that experience in hindsight from today, what about those experiences were training you for your career today that you didn't necessarily understand then?
At 12, I knew that I loved food. I knew that I loved working with people. But what I didn't realize at 12 is how much my focus would be on teaching and on the community. But I did it every single weekend when I was 12 years old. So I would teach adults, here's how you make this dish. My grandmother would give me instruction. I was able to then teach to other people. This is really good timing because I'm about to switch vegetables.
Sorry. Had a feeling.
Yeah.
I had a feeling.
Well, I'm trying to match the amounts for the carrots and the daikon radish with the carrot. I'm gonna wipe this down really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Is that potato or a different type of carrot?
It's a radish.
A radish.
Yeah, so daikon. It's not as spicy as like a red radish, but it does give you like a little bit of that spice. Do you like radish? You're
I've never
picky
had
eater.
radish.
Okay.
I've never had radish. I'm excited to try some radish today.
Okay,
I'm excited to try some radish, some oysters.
Yeah. And you've never had oysters?
I've never had oysters.
Okay, all right.
Everyone out there who knows me knows I'm the pickiest eater in the world, but I'm excited to eat from a world-renowned chef, so how could I not try it out?
Well, I'm grateful that you're at least gonna try. Oysters can be an acquired taste, but fried, It's like the great equalizer. In Cleveland, we fry. So our wings are batter fried. So it always puts me in the frame of like a tempura, where you're getting that thin batter, nice crunch. And usually we have I don't know if it's a sandwich, a sub, I don't know. It's a Polish boy. So it is like a Polish sausage with coleslaw, which I'm doing coleslaw today. And it has French fries. So you're gonna get some of those elements today when we're eating this salad, just in a different form. But yeah, the Polish boy in Cleveland, they go hand in hand.
Cleveland po' boys.
Yeah.
Not Louisiana po' boy, Cleveland po' boys.
Well, Polish boys.
You ultimately end up attending and graduating from the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, also known as CIA, which is a world-renowned institution that dates its excellence back all the way to 1946. This institution has produced household names in the culinary industry, such as Chef Roy Choi and the late Anthony Bourdain. So my question is, being from Cleveland, Ohio, can you walk us through what it was like, what you were feeling, and your experience as you entered in not just this huge city, but this profound school as well?
Sure. So my first day of the CIA, ever seeing the campus, was my first day of class. And so I get there and it looks like Hogwarts from Harry Potter. Beautiful campus, but I quickly realized that not many people look like me. And so the first thing that I thought that I needed to do is create an organization for Black students so that the graduation rates can maybe increase a little bit more. The CIA is pretty expensive. For me, I didn't necessarily have to worry about that. My mom is in the military, my ex-husband was in the military, and so I got all of my schooling paid for because of those connections. But many students didn't. They would make it through just their externship, which is the first part of the program, and that was it. And they can put, I went to the CIA on their resume, so that counts. But how do we get you to, I'm a graduate of the Culinary Institute? So I walk in, I say, nobody looks like me really. How do I bring the small amount of us together? And we do that. We become involved on campus. We get involved in the community. And that's how I started to teach culinary classes. We would go out into the community. We would connect to people that look like us, because in that community surrounding the CIA, it's plenty of Black and brown people in that community. And so we would teach and we would connect that way. And we would connect to the colleges around us, like Vassar, like Marist, like Bard that was up the street, and connect to people that look like us that way. And then I started to say, how do I shift the industry, knowing that I'm here, I'm from Cleveland, we get it out the mud, we have grit. How do I bring that to the CIA? And I would reach out to chefs just blindly, like, hey, I'm a student here. Do you mind talking to our students about your challenges as a Black chef in the industry? And so I used everything from Cleveland when I got to the CIA so that I can help someone that looks like me that may not have that grit, that may not know how to empower themselves or advocate for themselves. And that was the journey that I took to become now an advocate in the culinary field and an educator in the culinary field.
Now, cooking, some would say, I'm sure you would agree, is a type of art form.
For sure.
Because of the passion that you put into it, the colors, the smells, all the senses that you use when it comes to cooking and eating the food. What message do you personally intend to convey through your food and your meals?
Love. Just that someone took their time to make this for you. In my food, when I'm cooking, I'm really thinking about the end user and how they're gonna experience the food. It's great for me to make food that I love for myself, but when I go to cook for someone else, it is an expression of the love that I have for what I do and the love that I have for serving others. And so for me, taking my time, making sure that food looks good, that it presents well, that it tastes good, is a way that I show love in the world. I won't necessarily say that I'm most like feeling and cry and all that stuff, but in my food, you can definitely feel like the emotion of the day, which is why when I'm training new chefs and I can see that they're visually upset, I always make them take a walk or go get water, because you can taste that in food. You can taste the emotion that someone is experiencing. So I try to make sure that that emotion is loved, so that someone's not like, ooh, this is an angry steak. Because you can taste that.
Wow.
It's burned, it's bitter, it's rushed. You can feel all of that in the food. And so I try to make sure that I'm not giving anyone else that type of experience.
Wow. So it's the same as college. It is what you make of it. And it sounds like you made the most of it with your time there. So CIA, this profound school, you graduated, you engaging with the other chefs on campus, putting on events and advocating for minorities on campus, trying to raise the graduation rate and all these other great, wonderful things in your time there. You ultimately end up graduating from the CIA, and then you moved to Columbus to study food science at the Ohio State University. What about that time at Ohio State, studying the science of food, led you to create your own food manufacturing company and recipe consultation services?
So my time at Ohio State was limited. I was married, I was working full time, I was teaching when I wasn't at work. But what I gathered from the classes that I did take at Ohio State is that food science was arduous. It was detailed. You had to write everything down. You had to make sure that you can keep people safe. And so I took that training and said, how can I incorporate this into recipes? I had no idea that I was going into food manufacturing. I connected with another chef, and he had a hot dog company, and he was leaving. He's like, hey, I'm packing it up, but would you be interested in taking this over when I leave? And I'm young, I'm ambitious, and I was like, sure, I'll do it. That company ended up not just being food manufacturing. We manufactured vegan hot dogs that we sold all around Columbus. Every restaurant that sold hot dogs, we sold our hot dogs to. Grocery stores, we sold our hot dogs. I purchased my first food cart that we sold hot dogs that we manufactured, the beef hot dogs, working with Amish farmers. And we made our vegan hot dogs every day. I was working with returning citizens, teaching them how to manufacture. And so now I'm taking all of that advocacy and education and shifting it into now creating jobs attached to that. And that was profound for me. I took the Ohio State education and said, now how do I reach this back to young people? Because that to me is my heart. I want to know how I can invest in the next generation like my grandmother's invested into me. And so they didn't necessarily do the food manufacturing, but they had to be detailed. They had to write down, if I'm going out on this cart, how do I do my inventory? How do I do purchasing? All of them became managers after working with my company, because they had to go through a leadership course where they learned batch logs, they learned organization, they learned how to put spices together for the manufacturing company that we had to label, we had to purchase, we had to make sure somewhere there was a category that we're putting into a log that they're able to keep forever just in case something happens. So I took the couple, I would say about a year that I did at Ohio State, and took that, morphed it into an entire company where now I'm creating jobs for others that will probably not end up in manufacturing, but they got their start in manufacturing, and they can always say, this is something that was a part of my journey.
It's amazing. It's like, they say, talk to your plants.
Yeah.
Growing the plants.
Yeah.
Leading to the next question, we were at a cannabis event, and you said, talk to the cannabis plant while you're growing and tell it what you need from it, and it will give you that healing properties.
For sure.
So is that kind of the same thing when you are in the kitchen cooking with infused cannabis meals? Are you kind of doing the same thing, or how are you deciding which meals can cure or help what illness?
It's a combination, right? Like you look at your plant and you're thinking, does this plant on its own offer nutritional benefits? when you're talking about cannabis, the actual plant, so the food, all have their own different things that they generate. Men historically around the world have used oysters as an aphrodisiac for their systems. You look at ginger, garlic is good for inflammatory system. But when you look at cannabis, there's something inside of cannabis called a terpene. And for so long, people knew THC, CBD, that was inside for their benefits. But now that we know more about the terpenes themselves, we know that if I'm using a certain terpene, it'll make me sleepy. Another terpene may make me talkative. Another terpene may make me inquisitive. So those all go along with an event. I don't necessarily want to do an event where it's all CBD if the CBD is going to put everyone to sleep. So I want to make sure that all of that is being thought about when I'm deciding on how I'm going to do an event and who I'm serving for that event. We did an event in Vegas where it was a CBD event and it was at the end of a long day. That is not a good combination. CBD, end of the long day. CBD is naturally something that relaxes you and puts you in the mind of, I should be going to sleep right now. So that was not a long event because people were like, I'm here. If they did not have any type of THC, that was it. It was like, I'm here and I'm gone as soon as they ate the food, because the food was heavily involving things that we're going to put them into a relaxed mood, which is good at the end of a long day, not good for a social setting.
100%. You don't want to be sleepy in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Right. Now, on the topic of cannabis and cannabis-infused dishes, for a dish like this, which is so, it seems like an exquisite dish, it's very flavored, it's got a lot of colors. How do you infuse cannabis into a dish like this? What is that process?
So today, oil is going to be our carrier. You can do it many different ways. So concentrates are my preferred method now. You can't see them, you can't taste them. But that also means that for many of my events, I take terpenes and I put drops of terpenes inside to give you that effect of not just THC or CBD up or down, but now how am I steering that car? Do I want to go to have a conversation? Do I want to go into relaxation? Do I want to go into thinking profound thoughts? All of that goes into how I select the terpenes that I'm going to put into a meal. But concentrates for most professional chefs is the way that they go if they're doing a large event or if they've been in this profession for a while, because it's consistent, it's lab tested. You don't have to guess, and you know what the experience is going to be on the outset.
Right. And you bring up a great point when you talk about the amount that you use and dosing. When you are cooking in cannabis, what tools do you use to try to manage how much you put in each dish?
So when I am cooking, if I'm using flour at home, I'm using math. I have a machine that I use that will incorporate the butter, but I honestly love using just a crock pot with a jar of my butter or a jar of my oil that has the flour inside, and I'm doing the math to figure out how to do my dosing properly. Sometimes people say, oh, this is going to get you where you need to go, and that's great. However, you should know how many milligrams are in your food so that if you have a experience that's enjoyable, you can say, okay, 10 milligrams is where I need to be, or 50 milligrams is where I need to be. But if someone just says to you, this is going to get you lit, this is going to get you where you need to go, that's when people have those experiences where they're like, I took this cannabis, I was stuck in my bed for 2 days, I'm never going to try it again. And then they miss the medicinal benefit of cannabis.
So your recipe creation and your perseverance in the culinary industry has allowed a lot of great opportunities for you. Your recipe creation is something that became very popular and caught a lot of eyes, and it's allowed you to work with the likes of Netflix, Dave Chappelle, Common, Sean Combs, John Mayer, Kevin Hart, and more. How is that experience being able to do what you love with some of the heaviest hitters in the entertainment industry?
It's been something that was unexpected. I really just went into a kitchen and said, I want to invest in helping others. I wanted to intentionally invest in working with Black women in their kitchens. And so I reached out to a chef that was in the cannabis space and I said, I'm available if you need help, because I was going through a divorce. I did not want to do my own business anymore. And she was like, okay, cool. Come to one event. Let's do one event together. And so I'm in the kitchen, I'm hustling. And after that event, she's like, well, are you interested in being a sous chef? And I was like, sure. I have time for my weekends. I can travel. That's okay. That morphed into running the kitchens for the chef, running the events for the chef, creating the recipes in conjunction with the chef. And it's something that I didn't see coming. I didn't see the food manufacturing coming. I didn't see the recipe creation and doing these heavy hitting events coming. But those events opened up doors for me that now my education can build off of. So the things that I was intentional about build off of the things that I had no idea were coming down the pipeline. And I am truly grateful for that. And really, I was just saying yes to opportunities. Wasn't something that I really knew was gonna morph into what it morphed into.
That's a great point. We talk about that a lot as far as the idea of the couch potato, how marijuana and cannabis makes people lazy and unproductive. Is it really marijuana making people lazy and unproductive, or are we just seeing overdosage of medicine that is doing the same thing that if you would overtake some prescription pills or any other legal medicines that's happening right now, and the marijuana is just getting a bad rep for the exact same thing?
You're definitely seeing people that don't know how to properly dose themselves, and it gives the couch lock effect of I can't move, I can't really think straight, because it's just like if you drink too much alcohol, you're gonna get the effect that you can't operate the same way. So if you don't know what you're ingesting and you take 100 milligrams, now you're locked into that couch, or you can't think straight. Now you're calling the police because you think that you're about to die. But if I know I can take a small dose and go up from there, and I can have an enjoyable experience, I can function throughout my day. That's why legalization is being pushed so many places. That's why the medicinal benefits are being pushed so many places, for the enjoyable experiences, for the experiences that help us in our bodies, in our minds, in our daily lives. Everyone doesn't have a medical condition, but some people are like, I just need to focus. Cannabis can help you if you know how to dose it properly, which is why I created with the Cleveland School of Cannabis the asynchronous course of here's how you dose properly. Here's how you incorporate cannabis in a way that if you're new to the plant, it doesn't have to be something that is harmful to your day or harmful to the things that you want it to do throughout your day.
Those were some heavy hitters. Netflix and Dave Chappelle and them were awesome heavy hitters in the entertainment industry. But your skills and perseverance in this industry has also awarded you to work alongside some award-winning chefs. James Beard, celebrity chef, Nikki Stewart, Daniel Ballud. How were these experiences working alongside some of the best in the same industry that you are in? Were they open to sharing wisdom with you? Is there some sort of friendly competition there? What is that experience like?
So chefs are competitive. I would say that I'm probably the least competitive chef that I know. And that's not from a not being excellent standpoint. That's from a, I want to share what I have. And so a lot of chefs are like, this is my thing and I'm going to keep it. But I was fortunate to work with many chefs that they do want to share, like Daniel Ballud, Chef Kwame. They are very interested in sharing, not just with their colleagues, but also with the youth, also with their community, also internationally. And so I think I got very fortunate in being able to say, I get into these kitchens and I'm able to teach, but I'm also able to continue to learn from some of the best chefs that are in the world. Culinary education isn't the sexy part of the industry. The sexy part of the industry is you're on TV and you're cooking with these people, and that's great. But I've kind of run away from that historically in my career, only because I felt when I went to school, they were like, you grind it out, you do the things in the background. And so that's been more of my lane of how do I build those educators? How do I build those chefs that are gonna run the industry, but still working and being alongside the renowned chefs? I get to pick up things. I get to learn from them. I get to see their gastronomical thoughts on a plate, and I'm always learning and growing. But it's not just from them. It's also from people like my students. Right now, I teach refugees. I teach asylees. They come in, and they may not be a renowned chef, but you're teaching me a Haitian dish that your grandmother taught me, that her grandmother taught her. And now I can incorporate that into my food. So I'm grateful for every experience and every door that's been open and those that are willing to share. And if someone's not willing to share, I'm grateful for learning the things that I don't want to do, because that's not necessarily the type of person that I am. And you pick up something from everyone that you're around, even if it's just things that you don't want to pass along in the future.
So right here, this is how you're infusing the cannabis oil into the dish.
Yep, so we infuse it with our oil right into our sauce. And then the sauce goes on to our salad. So if you're someone that does not want to ingest the cannabis, you don't have to have the slaw. Or honestly, when I'm doing an infused event, we always have infused, non-infused. So that you can have the full experience of the event, but you don't necessarily have to put yourself in a place that you're gonna be stuck for days afterwards. Citrus also balances. So I try to incorporate citrus so that you're not just going up to the moon, you're getting balance as well.
Oh, so citrus can kind of like counteract.
Citrus, black peppercorns, counteract the things that are happening in your cannabis. Now, mango, which I was gonna put in instead of citrus, mango exasperates. So if you see mango in a cannabis dish, this is gonna take you whatever milligrams they say, way higher.
Oh, wow. What is it about the mango that does that?
So we talked about the terpenes that are in some of the cannabis plants, well, in all of the cannabis plants. Mango has compounds that are similar to the terpenes that take you to a higher place. So the interaction is explosive, just like sugar. Sugar and cannabis have an explosive interaction. So the milligrams that you see on a cannabis edible for something like what we're making in a cannabis edible that's like a chocolate or gummy, add it up and add some more, because the sugar exasperates. So the effect that you feel is gonna feel like it's more.
You got a lot of colors on here, and I know color is a big thing, aromas, flavors. With this type of dish, what are the flavors that you are really wanting to highlight in a meal like this?
For this particular meal, we're gonna go heavy on getting some of that ginger garlic, not necessarily scallion, but GGS, ginger garlic scallion, is big for Asian cuisine. So we're gonna bring in some of those Asian flavors. We're gonna bring in some citrus, again, some of that sunshine in a plate. And then over here, we're just looking at balance. I have those strong, powerful flavors. And so putting delicate Napa cabbage in, putting some of my carrot in to balance something like my daikon radish, which is gonna be spicy and a really strong punch. And then texture. So for the oysters, we're going to fry and air fry our oysters, which is gonna give us a nice crunch for this salad that usually when you're eating, you're looking for more than one note. You don't necessarily just want it to be sweet. You don't want it to be salty. You don't want it to just be sweet. You want it to have balance. When I was first working in Columbus, Ohio, I worked and trained under a Taiwanese chef. And that was the first thing that he taught me. This is great. You have great flavors, but you need to work on having more balance, because when I was growing up, we made the same types of food. We made Midwestern food, we made French foods, but we didn't necessarily make a lot of international cuisine. Soul food, there's depth, there's like that hardiness to it, but the balance of incorporating different elements, like your tanginess from the ginger, the sweetness from the orange, to brighten up your dish. Those became very important in my culinary career to bring to dishes that I was gonna make for others.
As a pioneer in the cannabis culinary space, What inspired you to explore cooking with cannabis, and how has this journey unfolded for you?
Man, so I started looking up how to heal my body because I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at 17 years old. That is a heavy diagnosis for a 17-year-old. You go from I can party and I can chill with my friends all the time to I have to watch what I'm eating, or my doctor just wanted to put me on medication. And so I was like, well, I don't want that. How can I help myself? And so I started to look at ways that I can affect my diet. I was very active. I was a captain of the tennis team. I was a debutante. I was active every single day. I was working as a manager at Subway. And so I knew that it was the food that I needed to change. And my senior year, when I got diagnosed, my mom was not in the country. So it was me and my younger brother, and we ate whatever we wanted to eat. But at that moment, it was a complete shift immediately to I can make my brother foods, but I have to eat a different way. And he started to eat the same way because it was only a certain amount that I can do at 17 years old.
Great question. This oil you have here, all the edibles I've eaten, they're not doing it the right way. So when you bite into that cookie or that brownie, whatever food, you just taste this overwhelming and overpowering, earthy cannabis taste. So when you're creating a meal like this, what are you doing to kind of balance out those tastes with this strong, earthy cannabis tone that's in there?
I use concentrates. So concentrates they're concentrated cannabis, but they have all of the extracts taken away that would give you that pungent flavor. So you get the effects of cannabis, none of the taste of cannabis. What I do, I actually usually add in terpenes at the end of my meals so that someone who maybe like, I want to taste the cannabis can still get it, but the cannabis itself, I don't put the flavor in anymore most of the time because people don't want to taste it. They don't want to think about having it in a lot of times. If they're recreational users, that's one thing. But I work primarily with people that are not. And so they're like, give me the effect, but don't necessarily give me the taste of the cannabis. It's an acquired taste, just like an oyster, acquired taste.
Yeah, and it can be real overbearing. I know.
For
even
sure.
as a recreational user, if I eat a gummy that tastes too overpowering, I don't want no gummy no time soon.
That's right.
Because it leaves such a nasty and lingering taste in your mouth. But the effects are, they speak for themselves.
They do. And for me, I think that it is my responsibility to make sure that someone, if they're ingesting food that I've created, that they have this enjoyable experience. I don't want them to come away from, I had this meal with Chef Linda or Chef Barry, and I was stuck, and that's it, I'm done. I'm trying to counteract that. I'm trying to do something completely different, which is why we create experiences many times that I'm cooking. Which I started the experiences before cannabis legalization in Ohio. So they were underground cannabis educational events. Navigated myself from that into teaching above ground, where I was working for the Cleveland School of Cannabis, which is now the first or one of the first cannabis culinary schools that are accredited in the country. So just being on the forefront of education and information for this plant has been really, really critical for how this plant will be received and the stigma surrounding the plant. Because if I know that I'm going to ingest this, I'm going to be high, I'm not telling anybody about it. But if I know it's enjoyable, it gives me the relief and not the heaviness of, am I going to be stuck on a couch or am I going to be loopy? I'm going to now tell my friends, like, I know someone that can help you and you're not going to be stuck. All right. That journey took me from how to eat healthy into how can I incorporate more things into my diet that would take away some of that pain. A day like today where it just starts snowing and it was 40, 50 degrees yesterday would have took me down when I was in high school. So I started to research, like, well, what can I do? I can incorporate ginger. I can incorporate garlic, which we're gonna use today in our meal. And I started to see cannabis in these recipes, when I was growing up, we didn't talk about cannabis. We said weed, we said marijuana, but cannabis kept coming up. And so I realized cannabis is the plants that we grew up knowing as weed and marijuana. And I spent 2 years researching how to incorporate this into my food. And then my grandmother got sick. She couldn't eat towards the end. And I felt like there should have been something that I could have done to help her. And that lingered with me. My aunt got sick and they said that she was stage 3 or stage 4 with cancer. And I was like, well, this time around, if my aunt just can't eat, I can give her something that can help her eat. And she agreed. And so her appetite picked up. You know, it was just oil, cannabis oil that she was able to put into her food. Her appetite picks up. She's still around. This was like 7-8 years ago. She's still around. She's still going. And she started to tell people like, hey, my niece is making this stuff. When I originally started, I was working with 50, 60-year-olds on average. And it was a way for me to help from the health side of things, not from necessarily the recreational piece, which if that is what someone chooses to do, it's not up to me to judge them. But my journey was definitely from how do I incorporate this into health? And you can see the effects from people from the CBD side, from the THC incorporation. And then I began to teach. What am I doing? How can I share what I'm doing with others so that doesn't stop with me? How can everyone that I'm teaching become an advocate in their own right? And it's been a journey that has been beautiful and fruitful. And now my students, I started to make cannabis products. I started with butter and oils, navigated into seasonings. And now my students have cannabis wines and cannabis lotions and topicals. So it's been beautiful to see like how what I learned because of necessity is now helping people way beyond what I could do on my own.
Better to fry it, but from the health standpoint, nothing about frying is better.
Nothing at all about frying.
Nope. But you can air fry now, and so that gives you the experience of frying without having to have something that's been saturated in oil. So I'm gonna do both. I'm gonna do the frying on the stovetop and also in the air fryer. And all that means is that I just dip it back into the flour first. I think it's right here.
So you're gonna put it in the flour first.
So yeah, so my process is gonna look a little bit different. It'll be flour, batter, flour. Because in the air fryer, if you put liquid, it's gonna burn. So my batter just means that I can pour it. And I don't want it to be pourable anymore. So what I'm doing is pretty much creating a tempura dough. Dough is something that you can pick up. So we're gonna do that process again, but this time we're gonna end in this is still the tempura, just without the liquid. Mm-hmm. So it's a dry tempura. We're gonna put it into the batter and then back into the flour to coat it. Air fryers were like my enemy, not because of them, but because of me. I was like, if I'm a chef, I'm not using air fryers.
Right.
But there's something to be said about having good texture on your food. And from that standpoint, air fryers are killing the game. Because they give you texture, they give you taste, but they give you more of the health benefits of I'm not putting this into the oil.
Right. I never knew that you could batter food and put it in the air fryer.
Yep. As long as you put it back into tempura is easy because it's a light batter. Sometimes you have to be careful with flour because flour, if you don't cook it first or like take it, toast it up a little bit, it'll taste like flour still. It was happening. So, okay, we're gonna let that turn on. While we're waiting for that, let's go ahead and taste our slaw.
Oh, moment of truth, son.
Well, we didn't add salt, so I can probably say for sure that is gonna be an adjustment. when I'm teaching, I always have my students taste their food before we serve, so. Oh, good, okay.
Okay, we got the pink Himalayan salts.
Again, I try to add in that health element, so.
Mhm.
With quality ingredients, you don't need to add a lot. You add in just enough to get the full effect of it. All right, and we have our tempura that is already fried. I'm gonna move this down so we can get ready for the food that's gonna come out. So yeah, we're pretty much done. This is a really simple dish. For someone like me that works long days,
Right.
this is the type of dish that I want to come home to. I want to come home and I want to eat something that I can make really, really quick. That's going to give me satisfaction. That's going to give me the nourishment, but that's also going to not take me all night long to make.
Right. This meal takes what, about 30, 40 minutes?
Yep. Super, super simple. I'm gonna add a little bit more of our wasabi flavor. Like I was saying, when I was trained by the Japanese chef, him talking about balance was pretty much all that we talked about for my first month. So I worked a wok station for Express. Their headquarters is in Columbus, Ohio. And when I was working there, he was training me on how to make authentic Taiwanese dishes. And he would always say, like, your salt is good, your spice is good, where's your sweetness? Or your spice is good, your sweetness is good, where is your saltiness? So when I think of dishes that I'm making, like, this is more Japanese. But when I think about Asian dishes, I always think about him. I always think about the balance that he was really, really an advocate for.
That's interesting, because we think about, some of my favorite Asian martial artists. Balance is one of the most talked about things that they talk about when it comes to martial arts. So It's interesting to hear how important balance is in Asian cuisine. Ahead, what are your aspirations and goals within the culinary industry, especially in the context of cannabis cuisine here in Ohio?
So my goal right now, I have an asynchronous course, and so my goal is to push that. I have a lot of people now that legalization adult use has passed in Ohio. They're like, how can I learn more? And so my first thing is get the education. Take the class. If you don't know where to find a class, you can take my class. We talk about how to do proper dosing, how to incorporate cannabis into food, textures of the food that you're using, because you also don't want to put cannabis in something that makes you think of it as medicine many times. You want it to be an enjoyable experience. You can do that. So the education piece. But I'm gonna pick up my spice blends again. So I'm in conversation with an organization in Columbus, Ohio that is looking to produce and private label my spice blends so that I can offer not just a solution of how can you incorporate this into your food, but if you don't cook, you can just literally take out this packet, sprinkle it onto something that someone else cooked, and still get that relief. With the spices, even if you can't cook, you can still sprinkle these spices on top of whatever it is that you're cooking or someone else makes for you. And you don't have to think about the science behind cannabis. At best, if you're not using cannabis that has been tested in a laboratory, you are making an educated guess when you're using a cannabis butter or cannabis oil that you're making with flour. But with the spice seasoning, this is something that was tested in a laboratory. It was created by someone, and you know that you're getting 10 milligrams or 20 milligrams. We're looking into nanotechnology, which means that hits your system faster. So now instead of the 45 to 90 minute onset, you're getting that onset within 20 to 30 minutes, which again gives that relief. It provides you with relief. I'm sure for some people, they want it recreationally, and that's okay too. Again,
Like I'm here for everyone, but for me, definitely on my piece, I'm looking for how do I help people that need it the most? Because the prescription medication industry, they're always going to be the heavy hitters, but just offering some type of alternative that doesn't do what it's done to so many people that I know, which is turn them into shells of them former selves. I think that like that's where my passion lies right now, education and back to food manufacturing. So my journey looked like this, but I'm still connected to how I started: advocacy, education, manufacturing, and now I'm back to advocacy, education, manufacturing in the state of Ohio, which started my journey in cannabis.
3 words that describe Linda Berry. Not Chef Linda Berry, but Linda Berry.
3 words that describe Linda Berry: intentional, educator, advocate. Those are the 3 words that I would say describe me the most. All of my decisions, they come from those 3 values. They mean a lot to me. Also load up the dishwasher.
This one's the all fried one.
Yes.
I think we put that down here.
Yep.
Put it on the fried.
Yeah.
You gonna try the fried one?
My wife would never even believe this. That's why I'm glad you're getting on camera. Some 4 fried ones.
So you're not gonna eat? He's not doing oysters.
I don't mess with oysters, Sam. I'll be straight up with you.
It's right there.
Hold on. Slide over here real quick and get both of y'all in there if y'all about to get down.
All right, so today we're gonna try this tempura fried oysters. We got it here on a bed of rice. It's beautifully plated. You see all the colors. You see all the season, the sauce on there. It's supposed to be a little spicy. We got some wasabi,
Wasabi, you close, you
Wasabi.
close. Yep.
wasabi sauce on here, and we about to just go in. We got some fried oyster, tempura oyster.
That was a long prayer.
Right, let me get this sauce on here. There we go. Get some of this rice, get some of this slaw. Bon appetit.
Oh, I'm surprised.
It's not that bad.
Really?
Yeah, actually, I taste like I don't know. I'm thinking of like tacos, just because I taste the kind of like a taco taste. I don't know if it's the cabbage and things in there, but yeah, I give that an A+.
Cool.
Thank you all for having me. This is a great opportunity to really take cannabis and create it in a way that is gonna not necessarily stigmatize it as much. And I know that we're not where we used to be, but we're not at the goal yet. So thank you all for the platform that you're giving to chefs like myself to tell our stories, to share why this plant is so important to not just our journeys, but to the guests that are gonna be watching as well. So thank you all.